I will now open the meeting of the Potter Valley Healthcare District for Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. Rosie, whenever you can, please give us a roll call.
Yes, Director Cox is absent. Director Freeland.
Here.
Director Gallagher.
Here.
Director Patel.
Here.
And Attorney.
Here. There was no closed session, so nothing to report out of closed session for today. Any agenda modifications for consideration from staff? No, not at this time. Okay. And okay, so now I will open up for public comment on matters not on tonight's agenda for the Potter Valley Healthcare District. Anyone online wishing to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda?
No hands online.
Okay, anyone in person? Okay, seeing none, I will close down the public comment and move us on to comments from board members. Any comments from the board? Okay, I will just say that as a member of the ad hoc committee for external partnerships, as I announced at the last meeting, we don't have an update for that from that ad hoc committee today, but I will say that conversations continue to happen and continue to be positive, and we're moving those discussions forward. And as I said in our previous meeting in October, we will return back to the board with a robust presentation in December about where we're at and the steps forward there. I also want to give some thanks to Steve, as I mentioned in the previous board meeting, just for joining me today at Watsonville Rotary. Both he and I are Watsonville Rotarians, and we were able to present about Watsonville Community Hospital, the progress we've made, some of the challenges that we're facing as it relates to HR1 and other challenges as well today. And the feedback that we received was really great, and the questions that we got from that really strong group of advocates in the community were great. And just appreciate Steve for lending your time there today. Everyone in Rotary was happy to see both of us, as we had not been there in quite a few weeks. Yeah. And so just thank you for making yourself available. And I know that other board members as well are going to be going on the road and giving people updates about everything that's happening at the hospital over the next few weeks. So just thank you to the board for being active in your respective communities and being such great champions for the hospital. With that, I will now move us on to our consent agenda. We have one item on tonight's consent agenda, and we have the minutes approval for our October 29th, 2025 meeting. I'll open up to the board for any questions for staff on this item. No questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll open it up to the public for the comment on this item. Anyone online wishing to speak on this item?
No hands online.
Okay, anyone in person? Okay, seeing none, I'll close down the public comment, and I will entertain an appropriate motion from the board for our consent item.
I'll move approval of consent minutes of October 29th.
Second.
Oh,
Go ahead, stop and step aside.
just trying to help out here. Second.
Thank you. I have Directors Pimentel and Friel. I'll take roll on this item. Director Friel.
Yes.
Director Gallagher.
Yes.
Director Pimentel.
Yes.
Director Cox is absent. And Attorney.
Yes. Okay, I think we have to wait all of 20 seconds before we start our public hearing tonight at 5:40. Oh, there we go. Public hearing tonight at 5:45. So we do have a public hearing. This is the fourth public hearing requesting public input regarding the composition of potential Potter Valley Healthcare District Board election zones. We have a presentation from Steve, as well as I believe our good friend Doug as well.
Yeah, for me, it's just a reintroduction of Doug from NBC, who's helping us walk through this. So as you mentioned, we've had public hearings, 3 of them prior to this, and we've also had other public forums where the public and the board members have been able to give input. And so today we have our fourth and likely final opportunity to see the updated and revised maps that Doug has put together and brought forward based on the feedback that we've provided the last few times. And so I will hand it off to Doug. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thank you. And to the point that was just mentioned about everybody has good things to say about the hospital. I was talking to a software contractor today who's an Aptos High grad, but now lives in Seattle. And I mentioned I had tonight's meeting with the hospital, and she said, "Oh, my aunt works there. That's a great hospital." So just want to pass along with your strong reputation is extends to Seattle. So
Nice.
yeah, I have a
Doug, would you
PowerPoint.
like to drive on your end?
Pardon me?
Would you like to drive on your end, or would you like me to present?
Oh, I'll drive on my end if that's okay.
Yes, fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, that way I can shift to the other maps if I need to. So.
Yeah.
So the first couple slides here will look familiar to you. As you just heard, this is the end of this may be the end of a extensive process following all the statutory requirements for multiple hearings. And so tonight is our second hearing to discuss the draft maps. And if the board does come to a map selection tonight, the next item on the agenda would be the fifth hearing, which is the hearing to proceed adoption of a map. If you do want to look at additional maps or take a little more time to make your decision, then we do have on the schedule one more future hearing that would be the one in which you would choose a map if needed. All of you have seen this slide a few times now with the criteria for that we have to follow in making these maps, and it is just very briefly federal requirements first of equal population in each zone and complying with the Federal Voting Rights Act while ensuring there's no racial gerrymandering in the map. And of course, none of the maps that you're looking at tonight violate any of those. Then we have the state criteria. In priority order, the zones have to be contiguous. We need to minimize the division of neighborhoods and communities of interest. We need to avoid or minimize the division of cities and census designated places, and follow easily identifiable boundaries and keep them compact. And then California also has the prohibition mentioned in the top right, which is we cannot draw maps or select a map for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, a political candidate, or a political party. And so we actually have not looked at where any of the current board members live in the drawing of any of these maps or in the discussion of any of these maps. And obviously we haven't looked at any candidates or political party data in this process. And then if you come down to two maps that are essentially the same on all those criteria, which given the extensive criteria that California now has is pretty rare, then you can look at considerations related to what the courts have called other traditional redistricting principles. So that'd be future population growth or other local considerations. But as I mentioned, it rarely comes down to those kinds of things, given how many criteria there are now. So we started the last hearing with 4 maps, the green, olive, orange, and tan. Each one was kind of taking a different approach. Green was trying to blend 2 non-city zones with 2 city zones, and then the 5th zone would blend the city and non-city areas. Olive was trying to follow the city council districts as much as possible, which is tricky given that you have a lot of population that's not in the city, and there are 7 city council districts and only 5 zones. But the council districts were the building blocks for each of those. And then we also had the orange map, which really was driven by kind of a coastal seat, the big 5 you can see there. And then the tan map, which was another approach to blending and trying to follow school trustee areas from the Pajaro Valley School District. So coming at your last hearing, the board's direction, as noted at the bottom here, is to focus on the green and olive maps and to take some looks at some of the quirks in each of those. And maybe could we make them any better? So tonight we have 4 new maps, green B and C and olive B and C. So I'll spend a little more time on those. And these were posted a week ago on the project website. So hopefully folks have had a chance to look at them in detail. This is just the green map again without any changes. And the main direction out of the last hearing was that Zone 3 has this kind of odd looking foot at the bottom where it crosses the railroad tracks. That was really to try to balance populations as close as possible while staying within the city line. So the kind of upside down W or the M that's the bottom of that is the city border. And obviously that's an odd shape and might be hard for residents to understand and keep track of. So the request is to look at ways to get rid of that. And that led to Green B, which it turns out there, no surprise to any of you, I suspect, there are not a ton of people down there. So when I remove that and put it into zone 4, we stayed within the allowable range for population deviation. Our differences between the smallest and largest got a little bigger, but still within the 10% range that the courts generally are fine with. So one option is to keep everything the same as it was in green, except to chop that leg off of 3. The one thing that did come up as I was looking at this is that the border between 2 and 3 in this map is following, I think it's Union down here. It's Brennan and then Union. And the city council districts are just 1 block over. The border in this area runs along Main Street. And so from green to Green B is just the one change of lopping that leg off. And then from Green B to Green C is just the one more little change of moving that border between 2 and 3 over to Main Street. So you don't have to do that, but it was something that seemed logical given the extensive discussions of the olive map. And so I thought I'd offer that as an option. So you can still go with any of the original 4 if you wish. And then of course we've got Green B and Green C. The olive maps have more difference between them. So this is the original olive with its pairing of council districts. And because zone 4 is following council district 4, and council district 4 has this kind of odd arm that crosses Main Street, it does lead to an odd looking map. Because in the city council districts, of course, you just have the city part north and south of Main Street. But in Olive, we go all the way out to La Selva Beach and Rio Del Mar in 4 because we have those non-city portions as well. So, and there are, of course, a lot of people in that arm coming north of Main Street. So it took a much bigger change to try to look at how could we make that be a little more logical, compact shape. And the approach I took was to do different groupings of council districts. And B and C are very different. So Olive B, 4 makes a lot more sense. It becomes council districts 3 and 4 in their entirety. And then the non-city neighborhood of Freedom. So fairly nice, compact, makes sense, logical. The catch with this is that the result of doing that is that 3, as you can see in the inset map, now doesn't have any part of the city. And so it becomes a non-city seat going from not into Pajaro Dunes, but the edge of Pajaro Dunes, getting La Selva, Rio Del Mar, all the way around to Corralitos. So we end up with 4 that are heavily based on council districts, and then 1 outside the city. The pairings, just so you're familiar, I can run through them. 2 is council districts 2 and 7, and then going out and around to Interlaken, the north part of Interlaken. 5 in this map is council districts 5 and 6, and then going out to the southern part of Interlaken. And then 1 is actually essentially the same in all 3 maps. It remains council district 1, and then all of the Monterey County portion of the hospital district plus Pajaro Dunes. There's a tiny little change that I'll point out just to keep us in that 10% range in map C. But zone 1 in Olive and Olive B are the same. So you can see it gets away from our council district basis by taking 3 out of the city, But then we get very nice clear pairings of 2 council districts in each seat, plus a little bit of rural area, or 1 council district 1 and Monterey County. Olive C is a second approach at regrouping. One thing to note, Zone 4 looks a little funny because it's getting Council District 3, the portion of Council District 4 that's north of Maine, so not all of it, but a very clear division. And then it goes up into Amnesty and Corlitas. This looks like a narrow neck, but actually on the ground, it's very clear because this boundary is the airport. The airport is the city border. And then right in here is the lumberyard. And so people in this area will clearly know if they're in Freedom or in the city because they're either out of the city and past the lumberyard, or they're in the city portion. So it's a little bit of an odd look, but it does make a lot of sense from keeping communities together and very understandable for the residents there. This case, we do get C back into the city. So zone 3. It's getting Freedom, Larkin Hills, La Selva, Rio Del Mar, and then coming in and getting the south part, essentially the southern half of Council District 4, the part that's south of Main Street. In this case, Zone 5 is Council District 7, part of Council District 6. It's not getting all of Council District 6. And then 2 is Council Districts 2 and 5 and a piece of 6, just population balancing in 6 there. And then 1 is essentially the same. The little difference you can see over here in the inset map, instead of stopping at Pajaro Dunes, it actually pushes over and picks up a little population from 3 going to the La Selva border, but not into La Selva. And that's purely to get within that 10% population range. It's only a few people, but it's key in following that legal boundary. So a couple of very different mixes of council districts, same idea in all 3 of the olive maps, but very different combinations in each one of them. So, and then just as I mentioned at the beginning, your options tonight, we can go through this public hearing, getting public comment, following the board discussion. If you're ready to select a map, kind of informally choose a map during this hearing. And there'll be an additional step if you do choose a map. We have to figure out which seats will be up when. So I'll walk you through that if you do choose a map. And then if you do choose a map, then we go on to the second hearing and adopt the final resolution. Or alternatively, just do the hearing, give me some more direction, and we can come back for one more meeting. So that's my presentation. Happy to look at any details. I do have the interactive map live, so we can zoom in and out if you have any questions of exactly where these lines are or want to see any details. But, happy to answer any questions you may have before or after public comment.
Okay, I wanted to give the board some opportunities to ask questions before we go into public comment, just initial, if they have any questions for Doug this time. Alex, any questions? No?
Not right this minute, no.
No.
Okay, seeing no questions, and I'll open up to public comment on this item. Anyone wishing to speak on item number 4, or excuse me, item number 2? Okay, seeing no one raising their hand online, anyone wishing to speak on this item? All right, so I'll close down the public comment on this item and bring it back to the board for discussion. And of course, questions as well.
Doug, go ahead, please. Everybody hold back. I really appreciate the responsiveness to the last meeting. We had, I think you had presented us in the public 4 different examples of different concepts. I really like how responsive both of these kind of refined models between green and olive were. I think that you heard us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really appreciate that. And having the PC alternatives, it really helped me get quickly to a one that I really like and one I could be okay with, and the other four I'm ready to move on. I don't really have many questions other than just acknowledge the good work, and I think we're really close. So I know we have our next item is actually adopting the resolution. This is the public hearing to receive input on this. But Green Sea and try out my notes. At Green Sea and Olive B are the two in the order that I've come to really see the value in representation across our community. The Green Sea, I really appreciate having two districts that are solely the kind of the city of Watsonville boundary, making sure that representation stays in place versus some of Watsonville being diluted by other areas. Olive B, I really, really wanted to like that one. I still do. I think I could tolerate it. Tolerate wrong word. I could be okay with that. I really like the idea that it conforms to the city of Watsonville boundaries. I was really struggling with just when you do that, some of it becomes diluted. There's a couple of districts that, because of that, they're diluted by others outside of the city. But I really like the premise of that. And I think it could be workable, but Green Sea is just, it really feels like it's meeting to the spirit of what we're doing. For the districts are clearly representative of the residents who will be dependent on this hospital, this district. And one of the districts, I think they'll have a choice of where they want to get care. So I just really, it's prioritizing the right things for the districts of people who are going to be wholly dependent on us. Two of those districts are within the city. And so I just really appreciate the work, and I feel like I'm already starting to lobby, but I just really want to see where the rest of our board is at. And I'm surprised that I didn't expect that it would be November and we're at a point where we could be picking our final contestant. I think it's a reflection of the good work that you've done and the group.
Thanks. I always enjoy hearing that. And that is the challenge here, is making sure we capture your thoughts and goals. So glad to hear you feel like we did capture your goals.
Doug, I had emailed you earlier in the week about Olive C, but I changed my mind. I am in favor of Green B or C. Either or are workable for me. The rest of it, the others, to me, dilute the participation or the voice of the city by the other maps to a greater or lesser extent. So short version, Green B or C are my favorite.
Alex, Director Phil, any comments or questions at this moment?
I'm honestly, because I'm on my screen, I'm having to scroll between them, so it's taking me longer. I apologize. I've already looked at them, but now I'm hearing everybody else's comments. So one sec. I don't see a huge difference between Green C and Green B. So I think I agree with the others' comments. I agree with not diluting Watsonville City's population and ensuring they have appropriate representation. And I think it does honor the kind of the natural clusters of the different areas. So yeah, I'm open to either green. I'm trying to decide between green B and C. And then I do also like the olive B, but I can see why it got split. So actually I would throw my response more towards green, either B or C.
Yeah, and just to help, because I know you're on the small screen, the only difference between B and C is the boundary being between zones 2 and 3 being on Main Street or Union Street.
Okay.
So
Got
that's
that's why I could barely tell. Okay.
yeah. You won't
That
see that
makes-
on your small screen.
That makes a lot more sense. Oh, I see it when it's zoomed in. Yeah. So to me, either one of those seems to still hold the integrity. So that would be, I mean, I think it really does. I just I echo Marcus in terms of your response to what our concerns were, because it does, these look very close to what we were hoping for, I think.
Doug, I think when I was reviewing these, and apologies, I was looking at the packet, it's probably easy enough to get this question if I just go on the interactive map, but I'm wondering if you can bring it up for us and we can look at the population distribution in any of the green ones of the pink district. It just seems like such a large, wide kind of swath of our district, and it extends all throughout Monterey County into really the eastern parts of our county as well, up to Mount Madonna. I'm wondering where the population density is there, and
Sure.
for a representative of that zone, would seem of the five the most difficult, I think, to represent, going across different real economic and social backgrounds, and then also going across the different county lines as well. So just wondering where the density population is on that.
No, it's a good question, because you're right, it is hard to see. It's interesting, the Monterey County, makes sense to keep that all together, and that's going to be a big area to cover for whoever has to cover it. The real population density here is actually, let me see here, kind of different pieces all around it. So do I have the boundary? Yeah. So one of the neat things you can do on here is switch to satellite view.
Right.
So you can see it's mostly farmland. It's really a collection of different pockets of population. So you get up in Interlochen, there's some spaced out homes, but homes on the edge of Interlochen, there's a lot of homes there. So that's a big population concentration. Then, of course, just across the river in Pajaro, you're getting a lot of population, and then down farther south. But it is kind of those different pockets, and then around the lakes, just north of the city, we're getting population. So it's a big area to represent, definitely. Each one of these is fairly similar communities in that they're kind of I guess there's probably three, or I guess I'd say four,
Right.
somewhat dense neighborhoods, each one quite a ways from each other. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's I think all four of them, yes, even I say even, but even the blue, I think it's the number 2 one, is an extremely diverse community, and just the different types of backgrounds and social and economic standings of all the different folks who live in that baby blue one.
Mhm.
You got a little bit of district, I think it's District 2 in the city of Watsonville. You got a little bit of District 7, little bits and pieces of 6 as well. And so it's a good kind of amalgamation of all of Watsonville communities, about 3 or 4 different neighborhoods. And I think that one's a really great one. The red one, it just, even when especially right now that you pull back on it, and I'm like, oh, I think it's massive. It's a large, yeah, you think so? Yeah.
Yeah, again, if this were a municipal provider in the school district where you have different sites, different locations, and different, elementary school here or middle school here or high school there, that would make it complicated. But it's one campus we're talking about for the time being. We're talking about, a district evolving into a space of how do we lift up all boats when it comes to healthcare and community health. I think it's achievable, and as Doug showed, he didn't ask, but that red zone looks very familiar to me. It wouldn't intimidate someone like me to go out to those pockets and have an understanding of what those areas need and meet with folks, because they all have kind of distinct community locations or places to get in contact. And I recognize at some level, all the variations have, a single district that was very large, and the one that was kind of evened out, it really diluted it. So those are my 2 cents. I think it's achievable.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was looking for. Any other questions from the board about either of these permutations of the map?
Doug, I'm gonna ask you the impossible question. You're closer to pulling these data together, pulling the map together. And thinking about Green Sea, and I appreciate just that little nuance where you kind of modified the boundaries to make it a little bit more logical. So I know it's very minor difference, but I think it's very smart. Is there anything in Green Sea you wish you could have done? Like as you and your team are working on that, you wish you could have done this a little bit differently?
No, I think the boundaries really worked out, clearly. Our goal is to not like cut through neighborhoods and that kind of thing. And the boundary between 3 and 4 is the river and then Green Valley Road. So that worked really well. Then you got Walker Street. In this version, that's part of the reason it led to C when I was going through like street by street. The only place that it's kind of a neighborhood being split is up here on Martinelli Street. But that's just kind of where the balance came out. It's compact and it's easy for folks to understand. It doesn't look funny. It's just that's the one city street. If we go back to Green B, that's kind of where we got to like, okay, it's following Brennan and then Union. Main Street's a much bigger, clearer street. But at the same time, the two sides of Main Street may not want to be divided from each other. So I could see the argument either way on that. And the nice thing in this tool is you can overlay the lines. So this is the little dash lines, are, if you can see them, are the council districts. And so that's where I spotted like, oh, the council district is here. And if it's literally just a coin toss between B and C for the board, the county registrar will actually prefer C, because otherwise they'll need to make a little precinct between Union Street and
Yep.
Main Street.
Oh,
In these days of vote centers, making a precinct isn't really an issue because they don't have to put a polling place there. But back in the day when they had to put a polling place in every precinct, that would have been a big deal. So. And I guess the other piece, look, the goal here was to kind of have the two different viewpoints having representation. So it really does capture, the rural, they're going to drive a long ways, yes, but the fairly similar communities in 1, fairly similar communities in 5. And then 4 actually worked out better than I expected, where it's a blend and its rural area is Freedom, which in its own way is its own special type of community, right? It's not part of the city, but it's right next to the city,
Doug, I think the last presentation you talked about our raucous crowd on the first public session during the first public meeting had asked or had directed you to look at I forgot the exact term, but heavy use versus low use, how I remember it, agricultural property throughout our district. Do any of these reflect those, or is there anything that you can kind of dive a little bit deeper in that? I'm thinking about property taxes and that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah. His main thought was that kind of the Monterey County ag is different than the kind of coastal ag. As you remembered correctly, the heavier ag, larger farms, he thought of as farther south. So the one that, which one was it? Kind of, yeah, the olive maps kind of capture that. Let me see. Orange was a little bit, but it really blended it. Tan he didn't like because it was blending those two. So the two you ruled out, that you ruled out at the last hearing, were pretty good on that. Olive, I think, does a pretty good job of that because it's concentrating the two. And green, I don't think you'd object to. The light ag are split here between 4 and 5. But they are distinct, and then one is concentrated with it, what he would have called the heavy ag. So it's not exactly what he had in mind, but it doesn't violate his thought of don't put the two together.
And then the population of Pajaro Dunes, remind me again. I think we quizzed you on this last time and we got
122,
120, yeah, is that what it was?
Yeah.
including the 8 firemen.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think, so I think those are most of my questions, but, I agree. I mean, I was going, I liked Green C because of, what you both have kind of spoken about is, prioritizing the representation of city of Watsonville, residents, the folks who depend on that hospital who, have been growing up going to that hospital and don't go anywhere north of that hospital in order to get the emergency care and some of their other care as well. And just being able to have representation of that group. I did like in the Olive how the area 1 and 2 really separated and was there at the county line. Although the more I look at it, the more that I think about the possible dilution of Watsonville representation, I also agree that if my good friend who has lived in the rural parts of the district for the better part of his life says that those neighborhoods are about the same, then I trust his judgment on that. And I am leaning as well too to the green C map because of how clean down Main Street all the way up to me makes a lot of sense in terms of the representation there. So.
I will share what you're wrestling with is something we hear a lot, and there's no right or wrong answer of, in the Olive map, you could end up, or in any of the Olive maps, you could end up with 5 board members from Watsonville, or you
Right.
could end up with 0.
Yeah.
So, to your point, if people are looking those later, what does dilution mean? In green, you're sure to have 2 and very likely to have 3 from Watsonville, and then have 2 from non-Watsonville. So it's that surety versus roll the dice for possibly more that is the constant challenge and dilemma in these projects.
Definitely, and I think about our partners in the county of Monterey for future decisions and future, possible initiatives and all those things to see their one district in which they have representation, and I suppose they have representation in 4 as well, but to see that their one district in which their residents are represented in is split right down the middle between the 2 counties. I think about that as well, and it kind of weighs on me as I look at the green one. But in prioritizing representation from the city of Watsonville, I think green C, and it just kind of looks nice other than that big red kind of swat. But it fights everything that I don't like about district mapping in that the possible gerrymandering. It just looks clean. Everything is really naturally aligned to natural streets and site markers. It just looks right, I think. So, are there any other questions, any comments? There are, we don't need a motion here from what I understand. And we can close down this public hearing and go on to item number 3, which is before we move on to item number 3, we need consensus on number 2. How do we feel about the different maps at this moment as a board? I know that
I'm hearing that for coalescing around Green C seems to be a predominant support, and I think we're ready to move forward and be taking action. Closing the public hearing, we've received public comment. So I feel like we're ready to move forward. And since I'm talking, I'll just correct the record a little bit. My good friend, since there's a little bit of undercurrent of dad humor flying around the room tonight, a little sarcasm. I was born in 3, just for clarity. After living at the hospital for an extended period of time, I then moved to, grew up in 1. That was my formative years out in Delaney Avenue. Came back to 2 for a little minute, got married in 3, had kids in 3. And then, my kids started getting older and we moved out to back to 1. So I haven't lived in 4 and 5, but I'd say, 2 and 3 is where most of my life has been. Just having a little fun.
I've also lived in 3 of those, so it's 3 of 5. So. Okay, hearing a consensus that of which the board sees Green Sea as the preferred option of the options presented to us today, then I'm gonna open up the second public hearing, which is item number 3 on our agenda. It's a resolution to adopt a map and election sequence by for by-zone director elections for the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District. The recommendation here is to 1, conduct the final public hearing to receive public testimony regarding the various draft maps. 2, choose the board's preferred draft map for use in November and thereafter. And 3, pass a resolution selecting a zone map for use in the November 2026 election and thereafter, completing the transition from at-large voting to division-based voting. Okay, Doug, any further details than that, or is it?
Yeah, there's one for the thing. You'll be shocked to hear that state law makes things a little complicated. So, as in so many ways. So I mentioned that we have not looked at the board members' addresses and the drawing or discussion of these maps at all. But now that we need to assign an election sequence of which seats are supposed to be up when, for that we do need to look at them. So let me share my screen and you will look along with me as we see this for the first time. So this is your Green Sea map. And then I have built, but not put on the map, an indication of where the board members are. And so the way this works is we look to see, first of all, are there zones where there's only one director? Or if there are multiple directors, are they both in the same year? And so in zone 1, we've only got one director and that director is up in 2026. So zone 1 would become 2026. Zone 5 has 2 directors in it, but they're both 2028. So zone 5 would become 2028. And then 2 and 4 are vacant, and 3 has 2 directors, but they're in different years. And so the year isn't dictated by that. So essentially, it's up to you. We need to assign 2, 3, and 4. 2 of them need to be in 2026, so up next year, and 1 of them needs to be up in 2028. But it's really the only guy. Yeah, actually, there is no statutory guidance on how to pick when you're doing it under the statute that you're doing this under. So if you have any preferences, that's fine. The one kind of in practice goal we sometimes look at is zones that tend to be lower turnout voters and less, so lower socioeconomic, lower education levels. We try to put those in a presidential year. So if you're looking for which one should be in 2028, unless there's some other local goal, which there certainly could be, the one that you think is probably the lowest voter turnout level would be the one that I would suggest putting in 2028. And I can pull up some numbers on that if you need that, if that'd be helpful for you too. But yeah, so essentially the only decision you need to make at this point is which 2 of 2, 3, and 4, which 2 should be up next year and which one should be up in 2028.
So Doug, if we're looking at Green Sea, and I'm just asking the question, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but just to your prompt, looks like 2 and 4 are at 50% voter turnout in the last election, and also lower registration overall, 66 and 64%. So it feels like it's either 2 or 4. I guess I'm just saying out loud what I think you heard, what I think I heard from you.
Yeah, are you looking at the stat sheets?
Yes, for
yeah.
Green C.
Yeah, and just for folks, the demographic sheets on the website for each map have the voter turnout just by number, not by party, but by number and by ethnic breakdown. So yes, 2 and 4 definitely have higher turnout in 2022 and 2024. So 3 would be the low turnout one. Yeah.
So Doug, in 26, I know that when we literally drew straws on our, I think it was our second meeting, whatever that was. We picked 2 and then 3. Are you saying that we can pick what, to flip it to go to three seats and then 2, or do we have to keep that same sequence that 2 are opening up in 2026 and then 3 are opening up in 28?
You do have to keep the same sequence.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and I one other thing I should have mentioned, sorry, the other consideration that you can consider is because 3 has 2 board members, one is up in 2026 and the other's up in 2028, you can, the flip side to the turnout issue is you could put that seat in 2026 so that both of them could run. It gets a little weird. The 2028 board member runs even though you have 2 years left in the term, you could run midterm, in which case if that board member wins, they resign their 2028 seat and are sworn into their 2026 seat. So that doesn't happen very often, but if there was an issue, if you wanted both to be able to run, then that would be the approach, would be put 3 in 2026. Otherwise, what happens if that's put in 2028, then in this case, Mr. Gallagher, whose term ends in 2026, couldn't run because he's not in a seat that's open that year. So this is the one, just to clarify, we're not drawing the lines or adopting or choosing a map to favor
Right.
discriminate. So in the election sequence, these kinds of things can be considered.
I see.
So that's a trade-off.
So the low voter turnout were in 2 and 4, is that? Or no, that was 3 and low.
Three
Three.
is the
Yeah.
lowest turnout. Yeah.
3 is lowest. Okay. So,
Sounds like there's a scenario where it could be 1 and 3 on the ballot in 2026,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2, 4, and 5 in 2028.
Correct.
And with that, the nuance there is we can't have 6 directors. So would
Right.
3, you'd have to, running as a district in 3, we'd have to take somebody from that district to run, obviously. I'm talking myself out loud, thinking out loud.
Yep. Yeah.
so if we, so I like the idea of ensuring that 3 and what's the second lowest on the voter turnout? 2, is that 2 or 1? No, 2's got to be high. It's got to be 1,
Well,
right?
Yeah, one is going to be one should be assigned 2026 because the resident board member is 2026. Yeah.
More about 2, 3, and 4, the ones that.
Oh, I see.
1 should say 26 and 5 should say 28. Gotta figure out 2, 3, and 4.
3 is the lowest, 2 is the second lowest.
3 is the lowest, you said?
Yeah. The total voter turnout.
And then 2, 4. Okay. So can you take me through the scenarios again in both, in in 28 and 26 for number 3, and then I guess in 28 and 26 for 2 and 4. I just want to understand what, because we wouldn't, the way I'm understanding it, which I think I'm just brain farting here and it's kind of late, is that we'd have an empty seat for a period of time, although I don't think I'm understanding that correctly.
Yeah, no, you won't have an empty seat at any point. This is the rule I tell my team when I'm walking them through how to figure this out is there's always going to be 5 on the board. So whatever solution is chosen has to always have 5 on the board. In 2026, you've got 2 seats have to come up, and you have 2 board members whose terms end in 2026. So Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Pimentel's, their current terms will end. If they're in a seat that's up in 2026, they can run for another term or not. So 1 will be up in 2026, so that's pretty clear. If 3 is up, Mr. Gallagher can run in that seat. If it's not, he couldn't run, and say 2 is up that year, then whoever wins a race in seat 2 would replace him. So you'd still have 5. Maybe. If 3 is up, then Mr. Gallagher could run, and that solves the problem of him not being able to run again. The challenge that sets up is then Mr. Nunez would have to choose. He could not run in 2026 and simply serve the remaining 2 years of his current term.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then would just leave at the end of this term and be replaced by someone from 2 or 4. Or Mr. Nunez could run in 2026 while being on the board. And then if he wins that race, he would then actually resign the last 2 years of an at-large seat and be sworn into a 4-year term as a by zone representative. And then the board would, this doesn't happen very often, but we have had it happen. So we've run through these scenarios a few times. You then have a 2-year at-large vacancy that if Mr. Nunez and Mr. Gallagher had run against each other, Mr. Gallagher could then be appointed to 2 more years to fill the 2-year at-large vacancy. This is why it's one of these weird situations where 2 people could run against each other and then both end up sitting next to each other on the board. So I would say, if you run against each other, please keep it very, very civil.
Which we did.
But that is a challenge. It's a dilemma either way. Either Mr. Gallagher can't run, or Mr. Nunez has to decide whether to run in the middle of his current term in that complicated way.
Well, that's a decision for my wife. She needs to be in the group here. But okay, I understand now.
I will tell you, I knew someone who was running for state legislature, and his wife actually said to him, "Can't you just have an affair? That would be less difficult on our marriage."
Okay, any additional questions? Before I do have to open up to public comment on this matter. Any other additional questions? Alex, I can't see you, but any questions?
No, I'm all good. I'm listening to it all. I'm good.
Okay, seeing none, then I'll open up to public comment on both the final adoption of the map and the sequence of the by-zone district elections, director elections, I should say, for the Potter Valley Healthcare District. Anyone online wishing to speak on this item?
No, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, anyone in person should speak on this item? All right, then I'll bring it back to the board for additional discussion. I think that is deserved, and then an appropriate motion for the 3 items before us. I think we're, just to kind of tee us up, I think we're pretty set that that zone 1 is in 2026, zone 5 is in 2028, and really what we're picking and choosing here is where zone 2, 3, and 4 are going to be. And, Doug, just so for the 15th time, to confirm. So if we put zone 3 into 2028, then that means Director Gallagher, because his term up is in 26, will not be able to run. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, correctly.
So by that, I mean, I think we need to put zone 3 into 2028. And Director Gallagher is one of the few of us on here who was actually elected by the people in the district. So I think because of that, he deserves to see out an opportunity, or I'm sorry, yes, in 2026, I should say, he deserves an opportunity to run for a seat again. So that's, so I think that kind of solves, that's the domino that knocks all the other ones into place, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Be very happy. Is everyone okay with that? I know I just kind of made a recommendation here, but just to read it back. So zones 1 and 3 would go to voters for election in 2026, so next November. And then in the hopefully presidential election in 2028, zones 3, 4, and 5 would then go to voters for election. I'm sorry, 2, 4, and 5. That's right.
Informative. Yep.
Any questions or discussion on that? Do we feel good? Then obviously we have to have any final feedback or any final questions before we move forward with our preferred map in Green Sea. Okay.
How does your seat work if you're in the same same zone?
He's at large until 28.
At large until 28.
Mhm. Yeah, I would, or I can run for the seat in 26 against
I see.
against Director Gallagher and whoever else steps forward for seat 3, if I so choose. Okay.
Just one of the interesting twists of this, just looking ahead.
No.
If one of the 3 board members whose terms end in well, I think you just hinted at it. The 3 board members whose terms end in 2028 remain at-large board members until 2028. So, so if one of you were to move out of the area and have to resign, the appointment to fill that spot, even in 2027, would still be an at-large appointment, because the rule is you represent the folks who elected you. It's a little weird now because you didn't really have elections, in the formation process. But yes, you stay as you are as an at-large member until you're elected by zone.
Yep. Understood. Okay. Seeing no additional questions or comments for either of those two, we do have 3 things and 3 items in front of us. One is to conduct the final public hearing and receive public testimony regarding various draft maps. 2 is to choose the board's preferred draft map for use in November and thereafter. And 3 is to pass a resolution selecting the zone map for use in November 2026 election and thereafter, completing the transition from at-large voting to division-based voting.
Doug, do we need to amend to provide direction about the voting timeline?
In your packet is the resolution that you're formally voting on to adopt. And so in there, there are a couple of blanks. And so what we were doing on page 2 of that, there's a subparagraph C that says in November 2026, directors shall be elected for zones blank. And so we'll be filling that in to say 1 and 3. And the next in subsection D is in November 2028, directors shall be elected for zones blank. And that will be filled in to say 2, 4, and 5.
Okay, then that being said, I'll entertain an appropriate motion on this item.
I'll move the recommendation, which includes using the district map Green Sea, following all of the public input, public hearings, community outreach and today's final public hearings. That the resolution contains the direction that zones 1 and 3 are up for election in 2026. Zones 2, 4, and 5 would remain for 2028.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Pimentel and Gallagher. I'll take roll on this item. Director Gallagher?
Yes.
Director Friel?
Yes.
Director Pimentel?
Yes.
Director Cox is absent and Chair News.
Yes. Okay. Doug, thank you so much for all your work on this.
Sounds good. It's been my pleasure. And as I've said before, I wish you all the best in this very, very difficult challenge of running this, the new hospital district. So thank you all for being willing to do it. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 4. This is our last item of the night. It's a discussion item. It is the Local Agency Formation Commission of Santa Cruz County, known as LAFCO, and Sphere of Influence Review. Steve, I believe you're going to tee us up here. And
Yeah, so we have the opportunity to hear from our LAFCO executive, Joe Serrano. He's here tonight. Thank you, Joe, for waiting for us and for being on with us and for your you and your team putting together a comprehensive report of our healthcare district. And I think you're going to spend a few minutes giving us a summary of that report for us to receive and file.
Great. Well, good evening, board members, staff, and members of the public. I believe there's some in the audience. Thank you for allowing me to present LAFCO's report. Again, my name is Joe Serrano. I'm the executive officer for the Local Agency Formation Commission, better known as LAFCO. You mentioned the team. So we're a team of 2. So you have 50% of LAFCO staff here tonight. So we're well represented. I did want to mention that for those that are not familiar, LAFCO is a state agency. We are tasked to ensure the efficient and effective delivery of municipal services to communities in each county in California. Some of you may be wondering, what the heck does that even mean? In other words, we determine who's the most logical service provider of public services. So when I say public services, I mean water, sewer, fire, or in this case, healthcare services. And when I say service provider, I mean cities and special districts. So in Santa Cruz County, we have 4 cities and 74 special districts. And LAFCO has oversight over those entities, including your healthcare district. So I'm going to share my screen with you and let me know that you can see it. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'll try not to take too much of your time. I know you had a long meeting, and before I begin, I do want to applaud this board and your staff for getting to the point where you're on the almost at the cusp of transitioning from at-large to zone-based elections. I think you're ahead of the curve of many special districts, not only in this county, but throughout California. There's some that are still at large, and as some of you may know, they're getting sued. So the fact that you guys are already working on this, in your 3rd, 4th year of existence, I'm like, kudos, because you're definitely ahead of the curve to other special districts. I wish more would be as proactive as this board. But that, I digress. So this evening, I'm just going to cover 2 things for you. One is I do want to give you a little bit more context of what is LAFCO, like why am I here tonight, and why do we conduct this statutory report. And then the next thing I wanted to cover is what does that report cover? Specifically, what were the findings and recommendations within that report? And unless my presentation answers all your questions, I am happy to answer questions from the board and or the public. So with that being said, I've been doing this for over 17 years now. So this is all I know. I've worked for a number of LAFCOs throughout the state. And in doing so, I've heard a lot of misconceptions about LAFCO. And this evening, I just want to go over them really quick. So just the top 3. The first one is LAFCO is just a watchdog for the state. In other words, we're here to point out everything that you're doing wrong. and just catch you in the act and say, aha, see, healthcare district, you're doing X, Y, and Z poorly. That's not the intent. We want you to succeed. We just have a funny way of showing. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the public gets the best level of service possible. And we can do that through a number of things. We could create new cities and special districts. We can add territory to an existing special district. We can remove territory. In some cases, we can merge similar districts into one. Or in some cases, we can do all those actions in one application through a reorganization. So LAFCO has statutory powers to not only identify areas of improvement, but also implement it and bring it to fruition. So we're not here just to point out any of your flaws. So we're not just a watchdog. Now that I think about it, I feel like the grand jury is more of a watchdog. The difference between the grand jury and LAFCO is we actually have teeth. We can actually move things forward. So that's a misconception about LAFCO. Second is LAFCO is a Death Eater to local agencies. That's a Harry Potter reference. But in other words, we're here to get rid of special districts. Less is more. We want the healthcare district to go away. That's not the case. Again, we want you to succeed. And in doing so, in addition to the statutory powers, LAFCO is tasked to do service reviews, which they're like audits, but they go beyond the financial health of an agency. So we look at your history. Why were you formed? The type of services you provide. What do you do really well? And what are areas of improvement? So I like to think of service reviews as telling a story. One thing, I like analogies. So what I was thinking is service reviews are basically a physical exam for public agencies. So LAFCO checks your vitals, we run some tests, and we figure out what's healthy, what's a little wobbly, and what might need a prescription. So it's not surgery, but rather preventive care for local government. In other words, we try to make sure our local agencies don't wait until something's code blue to get help. And that's what LAFCO is trying to accomplish with these service reviews. So we're not here to get rid of the healthcare district or any special districts. We want you to succeed. And one way of doing that is doing these service reviews. And we'll talk about this report in more detail shortly, but I kind of want to give you more context. And then lastly, some people feel that LAFCO is a useless agency for us, whether it's the county or a special district that says, hey, I don't plan on merging with anybody or adding territory. So why do I need LAFCO? LAFCO should be seen as a resource. We want to be a partner. I like to tell local agencies that I want to be part of a solution. So in this report, not only do I fulfill the statutory requirements, but we provided you some governmental options for you to explore and consider. I think that's what Santa Cruz LAFCO has been very successful these last couple of years is we're trying to help and we're trying to provide additional resources for you just to consider. The last thing I want to do is just sit on the sidelines and say, you guys can figure it out. It's your problem. This hospital is a gem for the community. And you know that. That's why you're on the board, because you care. LAFCO cares as well. So that's the reason why I want local agencies. If you don't remember anything I say this evening, just remember that LAFCO is a resource. We're here to help you. So now they have a little bit more background on LAFCO as a state agency. Let's kind of go over the LAFCO report. So I mentioned it's required by law to do a analysis for the healthcare district, but for all cities and special districts in Santa Cruz County. So I'm tasked to do this report for every single one, at least within every 5 years. So I'm not picking on the healthcare district. I'm required by law to do so. And this report was adopted by my commission earlier this month. I'm not going to go over the report. It was robust with information, but what I want to do tonight is kind of give you the key findings. So the first one was that this district is unique because it didn't go through the LAFCO process. It was created through special legislation, as you know, with SB 418, and then back in 2022, and then a couple months later, SB 969 made it clear that LAFCO had purview over this district. But what's interesting about the healthcare district, it provides services within 2 districts or 2 counties. And typically, special districts specialize in one service in one particular area, and that's normally in a single county. But again, this one is within 2, which leads to my second finding that under state law, when there's a special district that is within multiple counties, there needs to be one principal LAFCO, and that's based on assessed value. So in this case, the vast majority of the parcels within the healthcare district is in Santa Cruz County. So Santa Cruz LAFCO was designated as the principal LAFCO. So what does that even mean? So if there is in the future interest in annexing or adding territory into your district, you would go through Santa Cruz LAFCO. Or worst case scenario, if this district had to be dissolved, then that would go through the Santa Cruz LAFCO process. So I just want to make that clear. I am your go-to if there's anything relating to your governance or boundaries. The third finding, which is kind of the one that gets the most attention in the report, is the financial stability of the district. And that's something that is required by law for us to look at. And based on LAFCO's analysis, there is some concerns of the financial health of the agency. My understanding is when this was formed, it was to help out and provide public oversight to a failing hospital. This is something that the formation of a healthcare district is not the norm. On the contrary, in the last 2 decades, LAFCOs around the state have seen dissolutions of healthcare districts because it's very expensive to run a hospital. And that's why over the last 20 years, we've seen healthcare districts go away and transfer responsibilities to private entities. But even that doesn't mean that hospitals are going to be successful. That's the reason why this hospital has seen almost like a revolving door of ownership, because again, it's very expensive to operate the hospital. So when this was formed through special legislation, there was kind of the notion that, yes, we're going to have some upfront costs and we're not going to be in the positive the first year, but we weren't expecting what was going to happen with the federal government. And that really threw a wrench in this whole process. And LAFCO identified that, since inception, you've been in the red. And so that's the reason why LAFCO's report identified some potential options for you to consider. And we're more than happy to help you explore any of those options or help through special legislation, whatever we can do to help. I think that's the intent. But again, we needed to analyze the financial stability of the district. That aside, one thing that I really wanted to highlight in this report was that this district is probably one of the most transparent out of all the special districts in Santa Cruz County. Your website alone is just rich with information, easily accessible. This is exactly what LAFCO looks for a special district to operate and share information to the public. So it's not like you're hiding any information or you're having these meetings in the back room. You are pretty open on the whole process. You don't shy away of discussions of what's going on and next steps. And all that information is relatively available on your website. So kudos to you for having a robust website. There's 20 benchmarks that LAFCO looks at. This district fulfills 9 on their current website. The only one that's missing is a link or a copy of LAFCO's report. So I'm hoping that after this presentation this evening, your staff will add this to your website. And again, no issues with transparency in LAFCO's point of view. And lastly, your district has a coterminous sphere boundary. What is that? So a sphere of influence boundary is a planning tool. It indicates where an agency may be in the future. So right now, your district has a jurisdictional boundary, which is your service area. This is where it's clear the whole reason why you're doing your zone-based elections, you were determining what makes sense within your jurisdictional boundary. In addition to that boundary, you have a sphere boundary, which is, again, a planning tool that indicates where you may grow in the future. So there's a couple of different sphere boundaries. There's one that's coterminous, so it's exactly the same as your jurisdictional boundary, which is what you have right now. There's some spheres that go beyond the jurisdictional boundary, which means that if it's outside the service area, but within the sphere boundary, that means that LAFCO has identified a certain area that if you were to grow, this area would make sense. There's sphere boundaries that are smaller than jurisdictional boundaries. That means that LAFCO has determined that an area that's within your jurisdiction, but outside your sphere, maybe that should be detached and served by another entity. And there's the last one is a zero sphere, which means LAFCO has determined that that particular district should be dissolved and someone else should be providing services to that area. Again, your district has a coterminous sphere boundary, which I can show in this map here. I'm sure you're sick of looking at maps, but I got one more for you. And as you can see, your sphere is exactly the same as your jurisdictional boundary, which is this kind of pink color. But this area right here, which is in Santa Cruz County, is underrepresented. So it's in nobody's sphere, nobody's healthcare district service area. And it kind of just sticks out to me. It's like an island. And one of my pet peeves is having islands in place. So LAFCO, my commission, adopted a larger sphere for your district, which now includes this area. What does that mean? It does not change your zone-based elections. It does not require you to annex or add this territory, but it does indicate that if the district were to grow in the future, LAFCO is indicating that maybe this area should be part of your district. Now, this is including 78 parcels. It's designated as commercial agriculture, but there are some single-family dwelling units there. So in the future, if the district feels that annexation or additional territory is warranted, LAFCO has indicated that you may want to consider this area. But again, there is no obligation. These spheres are not set in stone. This kind of just reflects your potential future, but I'll always defer to this district on any change of boundaries. Last thing I want to cover is recommendations. So there was a couple of recommendations, but here are the key ones. LAFCO is recommending that this district provide annual reports to LAFCO in 2026 and 2027. This is consistent of what SB 418 identified when you were first formed to provide annual reports to LAFCO. So I want to continue that. That way we continue our relationship and LAFCO can collect information. So that way we are on the same page of where you're going and see if there's any way that LAFCO can help rather than waiting another 5 years to give another service review. The other recommendation was for your district and LAFCO to explore the identified options in the report and then provide my commission an update in April of 2026 and November of 2026. So a 6-month and a 12-month update to my commission. And lastly, LAFCO staff is recommending that your district include this service review on your website, either as a copy or a link. So those were the key recommendations in the LAFCO report. Again, I just kind of give a high-level overview of the report, why LAFCO is even here. But at the end of the day, I just want you to know that this report was meant to tell a story of where you've been, where you're at right now at the moment, and where you may be in the future. And at the end of the day, LAFCO wants to help you be the best version of yourselves and be part of the solution. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I really appreciate your time and bearing with my kind of thought process and weird sense of humor. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
May I make a quick comment?
Please.
That the Sphere of Influence report has been added to our district website.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, any questions from the board before I open it up? I believe I will take public comment on this. I don't have to, but I would like to. Let me open it up. Any questions on this, please?
Yeah. Joe, I think we know each other, so I'll refer to you as Joe instead of Mrs. Serrano.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I appreciate the spirit of the report, not just the report. I appreciate the intent of writing of how LAFCO can help. I think this has been a community effort from the beginning. The district was, became a district in March of 2022, and then the hospital emerged out of bankruptcy in September of 2022. And since then, I think as you noted in your report, I mean, we've done some incredible work solving a lot of things, not just our financial issues, but if you watching earlier today, our quality of service metrics are all across the board are phenomenal. Our customer service is going up in every direction. I mean, there's a lot of good happening, and were it not for our federal threats, we would be in a really different position right now. So I want to focus on the beginning of that, which carried the weight, which I appreciate the report. I appreciate the detail that was provided, and then the spirit of the report of here's how LAFCO can continue to be a partner and help. A question that we'll come back to, I'll plant the seed now, we can ask for response later. I'd like to get a better understanding of what you refer to in the report as an annual report. So I don't need a response now, but if you can think through, is that just our audit, or what might that mean? Because I have some questions about that when it comes back to the board.
And I have an answer for that, but I'll defer when you want me to answer it.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions for Joe? Joe, I do have some questions, and again, I'll just echo my fellow director, Marcus over here, and your report is extremely thorough, and I got some phone calls from local reporters after this saying, hey, what's going on? And so, and in, as you stated about our website, transparency, coming from a former reporter and someone who really values public input and community, education and knowledge about what's happening with all of their institutions, that's, we really take pride in that. So just thank you for your report. Thank you to your team and your commissioners as well for taking it very serious. And I understand that our amazing government relations person, Allison Violante, knocked it out of the park as well with your commissioners. So thank you, Allison, for that. And I have a couple questions just to talk about SB 418 and really the formation of the district. And then if we can get, just for my knowledge as well, like a good standing district, what that typically looks like, as a special district. But first, really about SB 418, I think, as it was written, or has been written, I should say, allowed us to establish the district in record time. All of the things that Senator John Laird did, just to, empty out a bill that he had worked very, very hard on to ensure that the district could be set up and we could purchase the hospital and bring it out of bankruptcy. That was about 3 months worth of time to set that up. Can you talk about how long it would have taken to set up the healthcare district and just everything that would have gone into it on a typical kind of basis, just through the LAFCO process of setting up a healthcare district in the way that we are set up?
Sure. Good question. Good question. And so typically a special district, just like a healthcare district, it would require LAFCO action. So it would be either initiated by the county or the city of Watsonville or the residents. And that typically takes, for a formation of a special district, that's a multi-year process. So typically it's 1 year of just collecting information and articulating the reasons why it's being even created at the beginning, and articulating that information to the residents, the affected residents. So that takes a year alone. And then the other year is the actual LAFCO process, where we receive an application, we jump through the legal hoops, we get all the required documentation, we do our analysis, we present it to the commission. Assuming the commission approves the formation, there's still 2 proceedings that happen. There's a 30-day request for reconsideration where someone can identify new evidence and say, LAFCO, wait, before you move forward, you forgot this new information. You may want to reconsider your approval. And even after that, there's also a protest period. So at the end of the day, the affected residents can petition opposition of the formation. And the rule of thumb is, if you get less than 25% of affected landowners or registered voters submitting petitions of opposition, then that formation moves forward. But if you get more than 25% or less than 50%, that triggers a special election. So that's a mail-in ballot, and then registered voters within that proposed healthcare district will vote yes or no on whether or not this should be formed. And if you get more than 50%, that terminates the whole process. So this is an endeavor that would have taken at least 2 years. And as you know, that time was not a luxury for the hospital. It was in the bankruptcy stage. So the fact that this healthcare district was formed within like 3 months that you mentioned, I believe was warranted. The only drawback is the reason why LAFCO process takes a long time is because we're forming a new governmental entity. It's not meant to be a temporary solution, and it's meant to be providing services and oversight in perpetuity. So we don't take that lightly. So it takes a long process by design. So that's the only drawback of it was a short process to form it, but a lot of questions were unanswered. And those are the questions that you're answering at the moment. So that's the difference between the LAFCO process and the special legislation. So yes, it would have taken at least 2 years to accomplish. And we just didn't have that time available with what happened. And I think this was a good alternative. And if it wasn't for what's happening at the federal government level, I think the district would be in really good shape right now. But we are playing with the cards that we have right now. And I think the way you're being proactive is the right approach. And I think if anything that LAFCO can do to help, that's the reason why I'm here this evening.
Definitely. And then the other question, and thank you for that answer. It's very thorough. I appreciate that, Joe. And the other question that I had is a typical healthcare district, their structure, how they operate their hospital and their other entities. What does that look like, and how are we unique and similar to other districts, or unique and similar to other districts? Across California?
Good question. Unfortunately, a lot of healthcare districts that are left in California are struggling. Not all, but more than we like to acknowledge. And that's why we're seeing 2 healthcare districts in Southern California, one in Imperial County and one in Riverside County, that are in the process of dissolving. And that's because it's the financial stability and the fact that expenses are continue to rise and revenues are either flat or just not enough to cover expenses. So, but there are some successful healthcare districts, and there's one that's right next door with Salinas Valley Memorial, which is now known as Salinas Valley Health, I believe. And what their structure and the reason why they're doing quite well, at least the last time I reviewed them, because I used to work for Monterey LAFCO, just for additional context, is they have a network of services. So not only do they provide services through the hospital, but they have doctors on duty that are, in Monterey County, even in Santa Cruz County. So they were able to minimize risk, so to speak, by diversifying their portfolio. And that also diversified their revenue stream. And for Pajaro Valley Healthcare District, your 90, I believe like 95% of your revenue is through patient services. You don't get any property taxes. For any special district, they normally receive property taxes. They might have a special tax or a benefit assessment, and they may get some additional funds. So they have multiple revenue sources. For your healthcare district, you're heavily reliant on one. And that's one of the difference why some healthcare districts, and you're not the only one. I want to make it clear that Pajaro Valley Healthcare District is not an outlier. There's other healthcare districts that are heavily reliant on just patient revenue services. And that, unfortunately, based on the new normal, it's just not enough. And so you either have to find another revenue source or cut expenses. And that's very difficult when it comes to providing an essential services as healthcare. So that's hopefully that gives you a little bit, answers your question, or at least gives you a little bit more information of the difference between a more successful healthcare district and the ones that are currently struggling statewide.
Definitely. Thank you so much. That's all the questions that I have. Please, Joe.
Joe, this is Joe Gallagher. I have just a sort of question about the map, the potential expansion map out into the southeastern part of the county. Does that area sit just to the north of the San Benito County Healthcare District, or how do they abut if you?
Yes, so the Salinas Valley Health, they follow the jurisdictional, the county boundary line. The San Benito Healthcare District is nowhere near, to my understanding, nowhere near this area. So the most logical provider, if it were to be part of a healthcare district, would be Pajaro Valley Healthcare.
Understood. And is this the community of Aromas or?
So Aromas is just south of this area. So I don't know if it's mostly farmland, but there are some
Okay,
farm worker housing and single family homes in this area. So it's not heavily populated, but it just kind of sticks out to me. And it just I like logical boundary lines, and so that's why we at least included it in your sphere. But again, this district is not obligated to annex this area, but if you were to consider it, that just makes sense in LAFCO's point of view.
understood, just for my curiosity. Thank you.
And then Joe, the other Joe sparked my curiosity. In terms of the area north of our district and the rest of Santa Cruz County, it doesn't look like it's influenced by any sort of other sphere of influence from any healthcare district or special district. Is that, I don't know if I said that right, but is that right? And
That's correct. So this is the only healthcare district in Santa Cruz County. So theoretically, this district could have a sphere that is countywide. And hypothetically, this district could annex the rest of Santa Cruz County beyond, so up north all the way to the northern portion of the county, if the district deemed that appropriate or warranted. So that is definitely an option for this district. So you're not prohibited of exploring that option.
definitely. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Serrano?
I do have two
Please.
comments. One, you raise a good point about, or at least bringing that to my attention, because unlike other special districts like a water district, you have to live in that jurisdiction to receive water. So Soquel Creek Water District can't provide water to the residents of Watsonville. You have to be a resident and a constituent in that district to receive that service. That's not the case for healthcare districts. So you do have your constituents in your service area, but to my understanding, anyone can go to that hospital to receive services. So you're providing services outside, or you're allowing people that are not a constituent to receive services. So it begs the question of maybe, again, this is just hypothetical, maybe it would be beneficial to explore annexation of the entire county, because based on your analysis, and again, I don't have any information or figures, your analysis determines that a lot of people are using the hospital that are not constituents or not residents within your healthcare district. I know Salinas Valley Health, because I did a service review for them a couple of years ago, they have data where they show that X amount are patients that are not constituents. And so that type of information is something that if you don't have, you may want to consider, because then that information could be used for potential annexations if you choose that would be appropriate or worthy of consideration. So that's a good point to bring up. That was not explored in this report, but again, if that's something of interest, that could definitely be included in a special study or in the next cycle of the service review. You just sparked my interest on that item. And then I wanted to go back to your board members' comment about annual reports. So it's either Senate Bill 418 or SB 969. There was language that says the healthcare district must provide an annual report to LAFCO in 2023 and 2024. And it just said that it needs to address the 6 or 7 factors under Government Code Section 56430. So that is the service determinations, that the same service determinations that we use for this service review. So I don't have all 6 or 7 on the top of my head, but it includes what's the population in your service review? What's the financial health? What are the current services you're providing? What potential services you may provide in the future? Are you doing any shared services or shared facilities with any other local agencies? And then there's one more that I always forget. But those are the factors that the annual report needed to address. Now, it didn't say how. It didn't say how detailed you need to provide or fulfill those factors. It just said you need to provide that information to LAFCO. And I believe the intent, at least the way I interpreted that requirement, was this will help LAFCO do its own analysis. Collect that information, give it to LAFCO, and that information will be used to do the service review. That's, I believe, the intent of it. So there is no wrong way or right way of doing this annual report, but I believe that in order for us meaning the healthcare district and LAFCO, to be a stronger partner, it'll be great to continue those annual reports. That way, I can have information that's fresh. That way, I can help with my analysis instead of waiting another 5 years to do another deep dive on the health of the district. We may want to just have these reports done, and then that way LAFCO can see, in real time where you're at.
I believe Marcus had some questions or comments.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarity. That's helpful. The passive aggressive side of me is concerned about the timelines and all the stuff our staff are currently doing. Given that it's a recommendation and not a mandate, we want to be responsive and we want to be helpful. And I know we're going to give you information, but I just want to make sure that we're doing it at a time and pace that isn't going to break our admin's last.
Yeah, no, good point. And the way I shared that to my commission was most of the information is already being collected by your staff or your district one way or another. It's just kind of packaging it and just sending it over to LAFCO. I don't want it to be a burden to the healthcare district and your staff, and I'm hoping that information that it's already relatively available. For example, those factors that are identified in SB 418 for the annual report, I was able to find all that information on your website. So that information is already there. It's just, putting it in a report and sending it over to LAFCO. But I'm flexible. I don't want it to be a burden to your staff. But one thing that I do want to mention is I really want to extend my appreciation to your staff for helping complete this report. So what Santa Cruz LAFCO does, not all LAFCOs do this, but I developed this report in draft form. I share it to your staff to make sure that it's accurate. And if there's any discrepancies or issues, we work on it together. And that way, when I present it to my commission, we can say that it was properly vetted. You may not agree with LAFCO's findings, but at least you know why we got to that conclusion or why we're recommending that information. I think that's important to have a strong and healthy relationship. And your staff was always available, specifically Mr. Gray and especially Miss Allison. She was just always available when needed. So your staff is, for a lack of a better term, like it's a kick-ass staff. So you have really good staff.
Great. So we got to go to public comment.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions on this receive and file with some direction? I would ask that we think about, Joe, this is just in the spirit of, we've got a lot of priorities right now, thinking about timelines that are closer to the end of April instead of the end of January for those annual reports.
Sure.
And coinciding with the status updates to the commission, the same thing like at end of April and then a year thereafter. And I'm pretty sure we'll report to you sooner than that, but just give us a little room. So my recommendation later will be to direct staff to work with LAFCO on coming up with a reasonable timeline that the board doesn't have to designate, that we're indicating our intentions and that we expect and look forward to collaborating well with LAFCO. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense, and I am completely open to that alternative, and I can work with your staff on identifying a more appropriate timeline. And my commission is, no one's like busting down the doors for this information, so we can definitely accommodate that request.
And I would ask, jumping ahead into the direction, but like of exploring your feedback later. This has been a long, I don't know, like it's been a long 10 years this last year. But I'd be curious about JPAs and how healthcare districts or like agencies might use JPAs as a different way of maintaining our autonomy as a district, but finding ways to still be efficient with like districts around us.
Sure.
That might be a helpful evaluation to look at. So I think that was some early hopes way back in time.
We do have a hand on right online.
It's me because I didn't want to interrupt anybody. It's Alex. Sorry. It's a comment. Sorry, it's hard to jump in. I don't want to interrupt anybody. I I appreciate the report. I want to throw my concern in there of an annual report for our staff and ensuring that it is actually valuable. While I found like a lot of kudos in there and it was great, we know our financial status really well, as you know, from our transparency. And so I think I didn't find anything in there that would make me be more curious. I mean, I just honestly, I don't. I worry about more bureaucratic stuff that doesn't support our staff. And so I'm going to be harsh. Sorry, I apologize, but that's just my feeling. I want the board to hear that because I just worry that while I like some of the recommendations, I don't feel strongly that this is something we should be, unless it's, I know we say things are easy, but having been an administrator with a board, having to follow through with things that are state requirements or county requirements, they're very difficult. So I just want to throw that out there to the board to be mindful as we make a decision.
Thank you, Alex. I do want to open up to public comment and I'll bring it back for any closing comments from the board. Joe, thank you so much for the report. If you could stick around just in case that there's any other questions and then some direction as well. That'd be appreciated. So yeah, I'll open up to public comment. Anyone online wishing to speak on this item? If you could, please raise your hand.
No hands online.
Okay, okay. And I'll now open up to the public here with us. No raised hands. I'll close down the public comment for this item. So I'll bring it back to the board. I don't believe we have any decision to make, but we can direct staff to complete the recommended actions as outlined in the report.
Yeah, I would stay consistent, and Alex, Director Friel, that's in the same vein. You said it a lot more eloquently than I did, but I'm just concerned about our bandwidth. I do appreciate and I trust, especially this current leadership at LAFCO, which is big kudos. I would look forward to how LAFCO might help us brainstorm and provide additional resources to our long-term planning. We're going to be around here for another 200 years, so let's do it well. So I appreciate, Joe, your implicit, here's how we might be able to help you in the future. So I look forward to that because I know our research time is very limited. And so anything you might be able to do or the commission might be able to do or bring other resources, I'd be really grateful for that. And I would echo my comments. I would direct staff to work with LAFCO on finding the appropriate level of responsiveness to meet the intent of an annual update to LAFCO to make sure you have the information you need that might come back to us to help us with some long-term planning. I think I support that, and I look forward to how staff might work directly with LAFCO on what makes sense as far as timing and content. And I'll see if staff has any comments to that.
I appreciate the board's support on all this. Thank you for that. We definitely do have a lot going on. So with that direction, Joe, we can definitely reach out and talk about what makes sense. I'd also like to talk to you a little bit more about the difference. I understand the annual report and the requirements under there, but the 6 or 7 items under the government code. But curious to maybe have a quick conversation about the other update that you had mentioned for April and November and what you and your commission would like to see there so that I can make sure that we're responsive to it. And then maybe we can talk about what timelines make the most sense.
Okay, any other comments? I do want to just make some comments and Joe, just appreciate you for coloring in the picture for us a little bit with some of the background on SB 418 and the long process that it would have been to establish a district and how it was not possible in the circumstances of which we were in. And so I say that because every time and I saw him this week on Monday, I saw Senator Laird and he said, "You're always beaming when I'm around you." And I said, Do you know what you did for us? I mean, he put together an incredible feat just to get us to the point where we even had the opportunity to pull this hospital out of bankruptcy, keep it locally and return it back to local ownership. And so, I just wanted to highlight that as well. Just like to have our guests be able to share their knowledge and expertise with us, with the board, with the public, with our staff, just to color in the picture a little bit for us to understand just how unique we are and the storytelling component which we have, and that we need to continue to remember as we're going through what is a really difficult time, and a time that will involve change as well. And then the other side, I really appreciate, along with everything that was included in the report, a lot of it which we, I know that our staff and our board, live and breathe it every single day and understand the challenges which we're facing. And the fact that if we continue to solely rely on just being an oversight entity that oversees the operations of a hospital, not thinking about how we can impact healthcare and our community at a larger scale, we're going to continue to have these really difficult challenges because of all the reasons that Joe laid out, and all the reasons that other healthcare districts that solely rely on revenue from patient care are also facing. And so, as I said earlier, Steve and I presented at the Rotary, at Watsonville Rotary today, and a good friend by the name of Dan Carrillo came over and said, "Hey, why not a casino?" And I was obviously joking, but there is I believe in Stanislaus County, there is an actual county who is saying, "Hey, I'll let you open up a casino if you'll give us an emergency room." And so we're not quite there, but we do have to be innovative about the ways that we bring in revenue and the way that we're trying to build out this healthcare district going into the future. And so that's my wink, wink, nod, nod, Joe, of thank you for this report. Thank you for how you run LAFCO. And I agree, I feel like we have, in fact, we have the entire staff of Santa Cruz County LAFCO on the call here today. I see Paco as an attendee as well. And so just thank you for your care that you've provided us today, and then with this report. And we're looking forward to, as my fellow director Pimentel said, thinking about ways that we can establish this district and continue to, think about possible JPAs and other possibilities of which we can continue to expand this hospital and improve the services for our community, which I consider the entire Santa Cruz County and North Monterey County as well. So with that, if there's no other comments, I'll thank everyone for their time, and I'll adjourn our meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you.